In your assignment, please do not use any mathematical calculations before you write your assignment. Okay, so for your progression questions, all of them have to be done by Python. Okay, you just have to supply the logic. You don't have to do any mathematical calculations. No knowledge of any kind of simplifications is allowed. Okay, even if you know various simplifications of finding out the average or whatever, nothing is allowed. You have to let Python do everything for you. Okay. So the only thing that you are going to use is the definition of AP. AP is A plus n into x or whatever. ठीक है, क्या यूज करते हैं हम उसके लिए? Into d. Okay, that is the only thing that you are going to use. Okay, other than that, no mathematical definitions are allowed. Okay, mathematical calculations in your notebooks. You have to let Python do all the calculations for you. Okay, otherwise क्या फायदा है इतनी प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज का? Okay, yeah.
So for example, the average of the
Yeah, that from there only I am making this statement. Okay, you have to let Python calculate the average. Okay, क्या नहीं हो रहा? ओके मैं अभी हफ्ते भर हफ्ते भर नहीं 3-4 दिन से सोच रहा था इसके बारे में. So I'm not going to rewrite the code. Okay, so let us look at the number line. Okay, can I increase the volume of this? अच्छा होगा. No. No. Okay. So let us say if you are trying to find the square root of y. Okay, and this is your final answer. Okay, this is your correct answer. Nimi. So if I choose this, okay, if I choose this as my initial value of x, okay, initial value of x, what if x0 were correct, then it would meet this condition, x0 is equal to y by x0, if x0 were a correct guess by me. Since it is not, what is it going to do? If x0 is less than actual square root of y, then where will my y over x0 lie? On the right hand side. Okay, because this is smaller than the actual value. Okay, if x0 is smaller than the actual square root of y, the y by x0 is going to lie somewhere here. Okay, now if I were to choose any other x, let us say my next guess is going to be some x1. Okay, if I choose this x1 inside within these two limits, within x0 and y by x0, will my resultant whatever, let us say this is x1 then y by x1, will this resultant gap be smaller than or larger than the original gap? It will always be smaller. Okay, the resultant gap is always going to be smaller than what I originally decided. Okay, so you can choose any x1 between these two values. What is the x1 that we chose in the algorithm that we discussed in the last class? The average of these two. Okay, the average of these two. Again, if you choose, now since x1 is not equal to y by x1, if you choose any other value between these two values, what is going to happen? The new x2 and y by x2, the difference between them is going to be smaller than this. It is going to be smaller than this. Everybody agree with me? So what are we doing? Again and again we are choosing a new x within x, the current x and y by x0. Okay, and moving closer and closer towards the solution. And so if you look at this code, what am I doing? Line number 6. Forget about everything else. This line number 6, the x on the left hand side is your x1. Okay, think of it as x1. And the x on the right hand side is x0. x0 is your initial guess, x1 is your new guess. What are you doing? Now look at the line above that. What am I doing there? I am saying while y minus x square or x square minus y, doesn't matter because we are taking the absolute value, while that is larger than epsilon, what should I do? I should keep updating my x. ठीक है, I should keep updating my x. So when will I ever leave this loop? When my x squared minus y becomes smaller than epsilon. Okay, I'll only leave that loop, and what is happening inside the loop? I'm updating x again and again. And how am I updating x? The way I have written this algorithm, every time x squared minus y, the absolute value of that is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So if you look at, if I run this code again, what do you see? My first choice for x, my first guess for x was 1, which was in line number 2. My next guess for x comes out to be 260.7. Okay? And the next guess for x is 131.34, and so on and so forth. I'm not necessarily every time, but I'm coming closer to the range which I'm looking for, x and y by x. Between these two, this is becoming smaller and smaller at every point. Okay, so let me also do something. Let me do print x comma y by x, and also let me also do one more thing, x minus y by x. Okay, so let us look at this. Okay, so the last line here, the last value here in this column. So there are three things getting printed. So if you print something with commas in between, it leaves the space and prints the new value. Okay, so that's what is happening. So the first value of x is, the first value is x is 1, the second value is 260, okay, and y by x is almost 2, okay, and the difference between x and y by x is 258.7. Now in the next time it becomes 127, then 59, then 23, then 5. So every time the solution space is becoming smaller and smaller. Okay, let me make this bigger for now. Okay, every time your solution space is becoming smaller and smaller. So at the next time the difference between x and y by x is 0.33, then 0.001, and then finally it comes out to be 1.6 into 10 to power minus 8. So we are very close to the correct solution. Okay, is that all right? So the difference between x squared and y for this particular value of x, which is 22.8122, is negligible. It's 10 to power minus 8. Okay. Okay, so the next thing, do you still have a question, Nimi, or is that okay? Okay, and why was, so if you remember, let me get rid of all these. Why did this not work? Why did this not work? It was working for the previous case. In the previous case, what in exhaustive enumeration? Okay, in exhaustive enumeration, when I gave this condition x star x is less than y, while that is true, please keep running, please keep iterating s. But it did not work in this case. Why did it not work? Because in this case we are not starting from, definitely starting from a value which is smaller than the final answer x. Okay, secondly, the new value of x is always not necessarily smaller than the final answer. Okay, whereas in the previous case, what was our initial assumption? That our initial guess for x was always smaller than the final answer x. Okay, and we were always updating x slowly. Okay, so that as soon as x crossed the actual value of the root y, we would stop. Okay, therefore this was working fine in that case, but it doesn't work fine in this particular case. In this case, you have to give this condition where you are looking for x star x minus y is less than epsilon, and obviously it's a good idea to give an absolute instead of worrying about whether it is slightly smaller or larger than that. Okay, so okay, does anybody else have any questions now? So in the previous case we were taking a very long time to come to the final solution. In this case we have converged, so this is called as convergence to the solution. Okay, we are slowly updating our guess x and converging to the final solution. This is called as convergence. Okay, yeah, it might work in some cases, but it's not a good idea. It's a good idea to keep because the difference can either be negative or positive. It should not make a difference. Okay, so नहीं ज़रूरी नहीं है यार. If x star x minus y turns out to be negative, then it will stop. ठीक है ना? It won't work. If during this there is a sort of what you want to think of a game of table tennis. एक side से दूसरी side हम भागते जा रहे हैं around what? Around this actual value of y. ठीक है, तो हम इधर उधर जा रहे हैं. ठीक है. So you have to give absolute, because if x is smaller than x star x is smaller than actual square root of y, then what is going to happen? This value will come out to be negative, which is not greater than epsilon. Okay, so it is going to exit. Okay, we don't want that to happen. Okay, so in general, whenever you're trying to solve anything numerically, it's always a good idea to keep whichever way you want to decide, whether absolute value or square. Okay, you also might have heard of RMS error, root mean squared. Okay, there is an error called a root mean squared error. So that also, what does it do? It, whether the error is negative or positive, the final the value that we consider is the positive value. ठीक है, square कर देंगे किसी भी चीज़ का तो क्या होगा? It's going to come out to be positive. Okay, so यार उबल रहे हैं इसमें यार, एसी नहीं चल रहा क्या हो रहा है इसमें? देखो कितनी बुरी हालत है इसमें. Anyway, so continuing with such numerical questions, one of those questions might arise if you want to find the derivative of any function. Okay, let us say you want to find the derivative of any function. What do I do? But before we find the derivative, let us try defining a function. Okay, so we can define functions like we do in mathematics. Okay, so let us so if you want to square something in Python, what do you use? This is the symbol, the hat symbol. Okay, it is on top of 6. So if you want to type this, you have to press shift 6. Okay, x square plus 2 star x. Python doesn't accept 2x. If you want to write 2x, what is going to happen? It doesn't understand what do you mean by 2x. Okay, so you have to explicitly tell Python, please multiply these two numbers. Okay, so 2 and x, and finally let us say 1. ओके, डबल स्टार होता है इसमें, हाँ सही बोल रहे हो तुम लोग, या आई एम रॉन्ग। जो पहली पहली सारी चीज़ें पहली पहली सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट होती हैं लाइफ में, ठीक है, वो हमेशा याद रहती हैं। वैसे मेरी पहली पहली जो मेरी लैंग्वेज थी वो बाय बेसिक थी, तो बेसिक में ये होता था, तो मे बी दैट इज़ द रीज़न। ओके, सो x double star 2 is for to the power. Okay, let me verify it once. I'm still ठीक है। Okay, so what is return doing? So when you are defining a function, you could do it many ways, okay, but you always have to have, not necessarily always, but if you want to return some value, then you have to give this return statement, return followed by whatever value you want to return. Okay, there is another way. So what would this return? So if I were to say print f of 2, what would it do? 2 squared is 4 plus 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1. Okay, it's going to give you 9. Okay, is that all right? So this is how you could possibly define any function that you wanted. Okay, and you can do calculations inside. So I have done all the calculations within my return statement, but I could possibly do calculations inside this as well. Okay, I could define a new variable z is equal to okay, maybe z1 z2 is equal to 2 star x, ठीक है, and z3 is equal to 1. z1 plus z2 plus z3. Okay, so this is exactly the same function that I just previously wrote. Okay, here I am doing this calculation in 3 different lines and finally returning the value. Okay, but it is going to do the exact same thing. Okay, okay, so now let us this is the use of return. हाँ, अगर तुम, yeah, you could possibly give a print statement inside the function itself, but that is not really a recommended thing, because you want functions to be self-contained, okay, and they should so if you want something to be printed, you can choose whether you want to print it or not. Okay, so if you're writing a function, until unless it's a print function that you are trying to write, okay, other than that it's not a good idea to give print inside a function, because sometimes you want to use the value but not print it. Okay, so these are like black boxes. These functions are like black boxes. You don't have to know what is going on inside the function. Whoever the programmer is, they have written a function and they know. The only thing that you need to know is that what are the inputs and what is the output. How everything happened doesn't really matter. Okay, so giving a print, although it is valid, it is legal, it is not illegal. So I could possibly give a print z4 inside this function, but it's not a good idea. Okay, now this is a good time to also tell you about a new data type in Python which is called as none, capital N-O-N-E. So if you look at print, जब मैंने print f2 किया है, तो what is it printing? None. Why is it printing none? Any idea? Because हमने कहा है print function print f2 f function f with the argument 2. So what are we essentially saying? Print whatever it is returning. What is the function returning? Nothing. Okay, the function is not returning anything. Okay, so you have to explicitly tell that this function returns something. Okay, so did we talk about any function in Python till now? Inbuilt function of Python कोई किया हमने अभी तक? Absolute किया है, ठीक है. So let us try. यार इनको बंद करने का कोई तरीका है? पता नहीं. चलो anyway I'll go home and search for it. Okay, so when I say print absolute 2, what is it doing? It is printing the return value of the function absolute with an argument 2. Okay, now if I were to do something now what is this going to do? So I've done print, okay, print of print 2. So what is print 2? So सबसे पहले क्या होगा? ब्रैकेट के अंदर की जो चीज़ है वो एग्जीक्यूट होगी. What is that going to do? It is going to print a 2. Now the second thing is going to get executed, print of 2. Okay, so what does that do? The outside print है, that gives you the return value of print 2. What should be the return value of print 2? None. Okay, print 2 is doing something. What is print 2 doing? It is printing 2, but the return value of print is none. Just like in this case, the return value of fx is what? In this particular जो मैंने exactly ऐसे लिखा हुआ है बोर्ड पे, none. Okay, so print f2 is giving me none. Similarly, print of 2 is going to give me none. अब the question comes कि 2 पहले आएगा या none पहले आएगा? Not the first none. I'm talking about the none of line number 9. 2 पहले आएगा या none पहले आएगा? 2 पहले आएगा. Why? Because that is getting executed first. Okay, so is that all right? So somebody asked me, does Python follow BODMAS? Yes, it does. Okay, in the sense that whatever is inside your bracket in a function also gets executed first before the outside thing can be calculated, because that is not even possible. Without executing the inside part, you cannot even call that function, because that argument has not been established yet. Okay, is that all right? वो हुआ ना print, ऊपर चला गया वो. ये रहा, ठीक है. कौन पूछ रहा था? You? Okay. Yeah.
So but in line 6, before line 6 we haven't assigned a value to x, so how is it printing that?
No. So lines 1 to 7 are defining the function. They do not need the value of x. That is why we have a special keyword in the line number 1 which is define. Okay, that is defining a function. 9 कहाँ print हो रहा? No. Please understand that. Hold on a minute. So it will become. Now you will understand the sequence of action that is happening. So look at it. What gets printed first? Are you sure? Okay, so the actual execution is happening in a different sequence. Okay, first line to get executed is what? Line number 8. Okay, line number 8 gets executed first, because nothing is happening between line number 1 and 7. 1 and 7 is just a definition. There is no execution happening, no mathematical calculation happening. Only Python is defining in an abstract manner what the different relations between different variables are. Okay, only when you call line number 9, when you call print f2, then that function gets called with an argument 2. Okay, is that all right?
सर वो F2 प्रिंट हुआ एंड फिर उसके लिए नन प्रिंट हुआ
उसके बाद print
हाँ, none, this none gets printed because of f2, because the return value of f2 क्या है अभी?
and वो 9
F2 की वैल्यू 9 है ना सर
f2 की वैल्यू 9 नहीं है, f2 की वैल्यू 9 है लेकिन हमने कुछ रिटर्न नहीं किया है, वी हैव नॉट रिटर्न एनीथिंग. 9 क्यों प्रिंट हो रहा है? क्योंकि वहाँ पर प्रिंट दिया हुआ है, वो मैं पहले भी कह चुका हूँ. डू नॉट गिव प्रिंट स्टेटमेंट इनसाइड अ फंक्शन. ओके, इट्स नॉट अ गुड आइडिया. Okay, not a good idea. So now if you let me make changes to everything, and so if you look at this is how it. Okay, is that okay? So do not give one hard and fast rule you can think of is do not give a print statement inside a function. Okay, if you want to print the value, just print the returned value. Okay, you can give it during the debugging phase. Okay, debugging may sometimes it might be useful to give prints, but once you are sure that your code is working fine, get rid of all the prints. Okay, because as a so let us say absolute में print function होता है already. ठीक है, let us say if the absolute or the predefined absolute function in Python is there, if it already had a print, so what would happen? As soon as you would call absolute, it would print something. Okay, not a good idea. I may not want to print it. I may not want the user to know what I am calculating. Okay, even from a security point of view, print inside a function is a bad idea. Okay, one of the uses of a function is to obfuscate. What does obfuscate mean? That to hide from the end user what is happening inside your code. Okay, hide from the user what is happening inside your code. Okay, so giving a print inside a function is a bad idea. Never do it. Okay, yeah.
So even though we print f2 without a return function,
Yeah.
it will automatically assign value 2 to x and then print z4, which was already in the defined function. So that's why it was printing 9 at that time.
So hold on a minute. Anyway, so what happened over here? I gave a print, but that didn't get printed. Why? Anyway, I did not intend it that way. It was by mistake, but it's a good thing that it happened. Although VS Code is screaming, please look at it because it is in a different light color. The color of the print statement has come is a little lighter than everything else. Okay, it is screaming, please look at this line. I didn't look at it. I was saying why is this, but anyway now it makes sense. Why is this line not getting printed? Because that is after the return statement. As soon as the return is called, everything after that gets thrown away. Okay, because the return statement immediately returns the value and exits the function. So that means how many return statements could you possibly have? Means you can have multiple if you give if-else statement. Okay, if you have an if-else condition, you can have multiple return statements, but only one return is going to get executed at once. Okay, once the return is called, you exit the function and nothing else after that gets executed. Okay, since I want this to be executed, I will do this. Okay, so now what is happening? So let us look at the sequence of events. Okay, so from line number 1 to 7 is just the definition of the function. So no execution happens, only a logical framework is set up inside Python, brain or Python shell. Okay, this is the definition of function fx. Okay, now we go to line number 8. It prints, are you sure? Okay, so line number 8 gets printed. इससे ऊपर कुछ भी print नहीं है. So I want to show you here. Okay, so this is just the commands that were running. So are you sure is the first output of this particular program. So that output comes from line number 8. Line number 9 calls says print F2. Now it tries to print, but it tries to print F2. Since F2 is not known to Python, what does it do? It looks up its memory and sees if F2 is defined. F2 is defined, so it goes to line number 1 or line number 2 if you want to call it, and starts executing the function f with an argument 2. Okay, it goes through line number 2 to 7. Okay, so if you look at it, line number 6 is getting printed, okay, and then 9 gets printed again because that is the return value of function f2. Okay, but that is getting printed from because of line number 9. Okay, line number the first inside function 9, that is also getting printed because of line number 9, but that is indirectly getting printed because of line number 9. I just called that function. Even if I had not given print, okay, even if I had not given print, it would still print this line inside function 9. It would not print the second line. Okay, so for example, let me show you. Okay, and let me get rid of this also. Okay, so all the prints are removed. Let me remove this print also. Okay, so in this case, what is going to happen? The only thing that gets printed is inside function f2. Okay, whatever the value is printed from line number 6, because we are not explicitly printing anything in the outside code, but we are calling this. So what is going to happen? So the only print that happens is because of line number 6, which is inside the function. Okay, but what actually happened to f2? We never even actually use the value of f2. We just assigned it to y.
वो 10th वाली line read करके फिर वापस 6 पे जा रहा है ना?
Yeah. It only reached 6 because of line number 10. ठीक है, so एक सेकंड रुको. ठीक है, let us say I assign y is equal to 2. Nimi, what is the output going to be of this problem, this code? कुछ भी नहीं. Good. Okay, there will be nothing will get printed. Okay, because that function never even gets called. It is defined. You can define anything in your life the same way you can define anything in Python, but if you don't call that function, it doesn't get called. Okay, any questions? Yeah. Let us do it. So hold on a minute. So what does f of 2 mean? That please call the function f2. Okay, we are not assigning it to anything, so any return value of f2 cannot be used anywhere. Okay, it has not been assigned to any variables. It cannot be used. Okay, you almost never want to call any function this way. Almost never. Sometimes you may. In this case, because if it has a print statement. If your function, the defined function has a print statement, then it may make sense to call a function like this. But almost never this is a good way of, because you want to use whatever the output of that return value of that function is. Okay. So हाँ, क्या प्रिंट नहीं होना चाहिए? नहीं, तब रिटर्न नहीं था ना, रिटर्न हटा दिया था हमने तब. अभी रिटर्न दिया हुआ है हमने लाइन नंबर 7 में. If I do this, क्या कह रहे हो? तो नन कहाँ आ रहा है अब? अगर मैं प्रिंट करूँ इसको, नहीं आना चाहिए ना? तब क्यों नहीं आना चाहिए? Because we are not explicitly returning anything from that function. हाँ यार, तब तो कुछ नहीं आएगा, क्योंकि तो अभी भी नहीं आ रहा कुछ भी. अभी भी कुछ नहीं आ रहा उसमें. हाँ तो क्योंकि हमने प्रिंट नहीं किया ना, अभी F2 को हमने कॉल किया है बस. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not a good idea to do it this way because we are just calling a function without using its value anywhere. ठीक है, any return value. But it may make sense in this case because we have a print statement there. So it is giving you at least something. Okay. So whenever we are, so let us say मैंने y, मैं खाली y लिख दूँ यहाँ पर. ठीक है. So what is that going to do? Only in shell does y, typing y give you its value. Okay, but if you type y over here, what is going to happen? It is going to, I told you in the first or second class that if you just type y, it is going to say, okay, you are saying y, that's all right, but it doesn't do anything. Okay, so let us look at this. What happens when you say y? Nothing happens to y. It just says, हाँ ठीक है y. Okay, now I just want to verify whether y has been changed or not. Maybe y gets reset to something. Okay, so let us look at, if I give print y, it prints the value of y. So if you call y without assigning it anything or without doing anything, it just says that you are trying to do a calculation but you are not using it anywhere. Just like line number 11 and 12 are almost the same in one sense. ठीक है, लाइन नंबर 11 में क्या हो रहा है, हम F2 को कॉल कर रहे हैं बट उसकी वैल्यू को कहीं यूज़ नहीं कर रहे हैं. y ऐसे ही लाइन नंबर 12 में क्या कर रहे हैं, हम y को कॉल कर रहे हैं बट उसकी वैल्यू को यूज़ नहीं कर रहे हैं. ठीक है, इज दैट ऑल राइट? या हाँ, yes, good. Okay, so if you want to assign the value of what do you think is print z going to give me? Huh? None. Good. Okay, because we have commented out the return statement from the definition of function fx, and I have assigned that to variable z. So variable can also have a value none. Okay. Okay. Is that all right? You can also, let us try whether we can explicitly do it or not. Okay, we can also explicitly, if we want to, we can also explicitly define a variable, means variable as none. ठीक है, इसमें हमने y को क्या assign कर दिया? None. Please understand that this is different from a string called none. ठीक है, this doesn't, so almost never can you have anything, anything on the right hand side without it being a variable name. Okay, ठीक है, कोई alphabetical number वो नहीं हो सकता ना. But in this case we have assigned none without any quotation marks. Okay, because none is known to Python as a data type which is none. Okay, which doesn't contain anything. Okay, any questions? So now there is another thing that I want to mention here. So let me get rid of this. So I have done, okay. So let me ask you. So if I do this, what do you think is going to happen? Already it is showing a curly line. There is obviously some problem somewhere. What is the error? It is showing that there is some error related to Z4. What is Z4? What is the error related to Z4? Z4 is not defined. Okay, any variables that you define inside a function has their scope only inside that function. Okay, any variable that are defined inside a function, their scope is limited to that function itself. ठीक है, तो Z4 हमने कहाँ डिफाइन किया था? Inside fx. Okay, so it is going to be valid only inside fx. Outside fx, I have no idea what Z4 is. Okay, and it doesn't really matter because the only thing that matters is in functions is the input and the output, the return value. Okay, in this case, the only two things that are accessible from the outside world are the argument x, okay, argument x and the return value. Okay, those are the only two things accessible. One of them is the input and the other is the output. Okay, now if you wanted to define a function which had multiple arguments, that is अभी तो हमने एक variable का function लिखा है, but if we wanted to have a variable function with two variables, then what would we do? So जो f of bracket x comma y, and you could use y anywhere. So if you look at it, in line numbers 2, 3, 4, what have I done? I have assumed that I already know x, है ना? I am not defining x anywhere. If you write this code in normal Python, it won't work because x is undefined. ठीक है? But where is that x coming from? X is coming as the input when the function gets called. Okay, so if you give this function without an argument, what is going to happen? It is going to give you an error because x is undefined. Now this function cannot proceed. Okay, is that all right? So this is called as the scope of a variable. Where is that variable having any existence, any wajud Hindi wala word? ठीक है? It has no relevance outside the function. Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4 have no value outside the function. Okay, so now I could also call this as, let us say this. Now if I do this, what happens? That's x. So the term x doesn't really mean anything. It's only one variable name that I have assigned here. So I could, so in line number 10, what am I doing? I'm calling fy. So what is it going to do? But the same function gets executed with the value which is associated with the variable y. Okay, this you probably already understand from maths. Okay, whether you call it fx or f theta, it doesn't really make a difference. Okay, so x is the input variable. The sequence of variables matters. So if you give x comma y, the first variable when you call that function is going to be x, and the second variable will automatically become y as far as all the calculations within the definition of the function are concerned. Yeah, you had a question. Yeah.
fx define करा और फिर नीचे एक मतलब function खत्म होने के बाद एक variable ले लिया x equals to 2.
Okay.
function के अंदर जाएगा या नहीं जाएगा या अलग variable है.
So if you are saying if I do this, yeah, it will work fine because that x, again, I am calling it as fx, but x doesn't mean anything. X is just an abstract concept which is defining the first variable of that particular function. Okay, so at line number 9 has no idea about x. Okay, so when I say in line number 10, when I say call fx, what is it doing? It is calling f of 2. Okay, so this x and that x have no relation with each other.
If I want to bring it in terms of x only, like x squared plus 2x plus 1.
You can't. I mean, if you wanted to do it, you had to do it as a string. Okay, there is no mathematical relation between.
Print function as in terms of what it is defined as.
Means you can have there is a help function in Python which you can use. Okay, so help returns it tells you what that function is doing. Okay, and if you want to define your own help function, what do? कैसे इसको एग्जिट करेंगे भाई? नथिंग इज वर्किंग. एनीवे, any idea? Forget it. Okay, so you can also define your own help function, which is I think triple quotes. Okay, okay, so you can also define your own help. So the first line of my code, if you look at it, ये उसको print कर रहा है, ठीक है? It printed what I just wrote. This is the definition. Okay, this is what I wrote there. Okay, you can give the definition or whatever you want to write associated with the help function of your function in triple quote, means triple double quotes. Okay, 3 times quotation mark, double quotation mark, followed by the definition, whatever you want to write, followed by 3 quotation marks, 3 double quotation marks again. Okay, look at it. This is the definition. This is exactly what the help of function f is printing over here. Whatever you want, whatever the programmer has designed, this, you are a programmer now. So if you want to associate a definition with your function, you can write over there. Okay, obviously it doesn't hold any meaning to Python. Okay, Python has no idea. It's just like a comment to the end user. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Multiline. There are no multiline comments in Python. हाँ? करता है? Okay, it doesn't. Anyway.
ट्रिपल डबल कोड में तो कमेंट्स लिखते हैं.
नहीं, मुझे नहीं पता यार. When yeah, so if you give a comment inside a function in this manner, I did not know. I actually searched for it, that if there is any triple quotes, multi-line comments in Python. Actually, हैं? किसके लिए? Okay, so I just searched for it a couple of weeks back, and still I got the same answer. So I don't know whether maybe it works. The triple quote works. It seems to work. Yeah, it is not giving any error, so it seems to be working. But I don't know whether it is a standard definition, because I looked it up a couple of weeks back, maybe before the beginning of the semester, because I was trying to write a code or something, and I looked it up, specifically this thing. Huh? Yeah, it's not a good idea. We don't want to do that. Okay. Yeah, but still, what is your question? Yeah, I don't know how to exit this help. वहाँ पे भी नहीं पता चला मुझे कैसे इसको exit करेंगे. But there would be some way. I don't know what that shortcut is. But not a good idea to write it inside a code. Okay, you are supposed, as a programmer, you are supposed to know what you are writing before, and if you want to take help, then you have to do it within the terminal. But even if you want to do it inside your code, next line you're going to delete it, because you already know what that means now. Okay, but yeah, there would be some way, some shortcut, keyboard shortcut to get out of help. I don't know what that is. Maybe Q is. Q है क्या? Q है. Small Q. Okay, small Q exits help. Okay, so I think we are done for today, and I'll continue on Thursday. Okay, bye. Your assignment is due tonight at midnight. Please complete it and submit it. And this week we'll be covering loops in the lab. Okay, so please try whatever problem you want to solve in your life in the lab. Okay.